What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video on my channel. My name is Josh Fan of ShowMeFootball.com, covering your Missouri Tigers. Today, I am joined by Brayden Dowers, as always, and we are doing an emergency Show Me Football podcast / video because Mizzou has lost its defensive coordinator, Blake Baker, as he has accepted the defensive coordinator vacancy at the University of LSU, or, LSU, Louisiana, whatever, however you say it. But this calls for an emergency episode because obviously, Brayden, this is a pretty big deal. We thought that the fear of losing our coordinators was over, and then Brian Kelly decided to fire his entire defensive staff. I think that was on Tuesday or Wednesday or something like that, beginning of the week. He decided to fire the entire defensive staff. Then stories started to come out that Blake Baker was the leading candidate for that job. And I know you and Connor in the group chat gave me crap because I was freaking out as soon as that happened. But I've seen this story way too many times. More often than not, when you hear X candidate is the favorite for X job, that guy typically ends up getting the job more than half the time. And not even 2 days after that report, Blake Baker now is the defensive coordinator at LSU. So this is not ideal, Brayden. The dream offseason has now come to a screeching halt for Mizzou fans because this is kind of a big bump in the road. We thought that if we were going to lose Blake Baker this offseason, that it was going to be to a head coach job, but you don't even lose him to a head coaching position. You lose him to the same position at another SEC school. And that's what really stings about this, as well as the fact that Blake Baker made this whole show about him staying and tweeted out that video of the Wolf of Wall Street, "I'm not effing leaving." And then 2 weeks later, he leaves. That's the shitty part about Blake Baker accepting this job at LSU. If he had just left at the beginning of the offseason, or if he had not, made the whole show about him staying and had that presser after winning the Cotton Bowl about how he never considered going anywhere else, and that Drinkwitz talked about how he turned down a bunch of defensive coordinator jobs. And we were even talking before I launched this episode about how it doesn't really make a ton of sense why Blake Baker signed that extension and then took this LSU job, because everybody knew that this LSU opening was coming. Everybody could see that Brian Kelly is going to fire this defensive staff this offseason. So surely Blake Baker was not surprised by the fact that LSU job came open. So you almost kind of wonder if he signed that extension with Mizzou and got that raise that came with signing that extension, so that it made LSU pay him more, and then LSU has to pay that buyout to the University of Missouri. Now, I don't know. I'm just spitballing here. I'm pissed off because we lost our defensive coordinator. But Brayden, what are your initial thoughts on Blake Baker heading to LSU?
His name's no longer Blake Baker. It's Snake Baker. Or no, what you
Snake
call him.
Snake Flaker, or Fake Flaker, or yeah. I don't know. There's a bunch of things that you could call him now.
I'm going to get this out of the way first because it's been about an hour and a half, 2 hours since the news broke. And I gave myself some time to sit back and try to make it seem that I appreciate Blake Baker and I hope that he has success elsewhere. Just like I can move on from – no, I can't. I can't move on from this. And there's a main reason why. It's how he handled the situation. Like, I would be completely fine if Blake Baker did this during the regular coaching carousel, or if he didn't tweet out that video. Thank you, Josh. Amazing picture. If he didn't tweet out that Wolf of Wall Street video, and if he didn't make the comments that he made, and I think the Power Mizzou article it was, or it was another article, but he should have never made those statements about how happy he and his family were here if he wasn't going to be a snake and turn around and go right back to LSU. So I don't wish him success. Like, I hope that LSU lets up 50 points every single game. This record over here to my left is Fleetwood Mac's Rumors. There is a song on it. It is track 5 on side 1, Go Your Own Way. that this entire situation really reminded me of. So that's why I decided to put it up in my new little setup, because Blake Baker's going his own way. He's shacking up, packing up. Yeah, I'm not a big Blake Baker fan right now. Sure, I appreciate everything that he did for us in 2021 and 2022, turning around our defense. But we have $1.5 million to spend now. Drink can go poach anybody that he wants. It seems, based off of the tweets that he sent out, that that is like it's going to be a possibility instead of hiring internally. And let's just make sure that our entire transfer portal that we just got, let's make sure that all of them stay. Let's make sure that Baker doesn't take anybody with him. I don't really have too much more to say, but fair warning before I say this, fuck Blake Baker.
Oh, you guys got the warning before he said it, so can't say you didn't see it coming. But so I want to talk about real quick that tweet that Drink sent out. So he sent out a thank you to Blake Baker and everything like that. But before that, he sent out a tweet. I just had his account in front of me and now I lost it. But here, give me 1 second. I'm going to find this. But he sent out a tweet and it was like, we're looking for a new leader for the death row defense now. Okay, here he says, within every obstacle is an opportunity to improve our condition. Mizzou football is a brotherhood that is strong. Our search for a new leader of death row defense has begun. And maybe I'm reading too much into this tweet, but the way that he words that makes me think that this isn't just going to be an internal promotion of somebody else already on the defensive staff. Because I feel like if it was, then he wouldn't tweet that out, because that seems like a fairly easy move that doesn't require a search if that's what they thought they were going to do. Now, maybe I'm reading too much into it and Drinkwitz is just trying to keep the suspense. But, I mean, I know one of the popular names that people immediately started spitballing was linebackers coach DJ Smith, who acted as the co-defensive coordinator this past season. And he seems to be next in line on the defensive staff to be a DC. I believe his name was also mentioned for the North Carolina defensive coordinator job before they hired the Georgia Tech head coach for the DC job earlier today. So he's an up-and-coming name. Also, Kevin Peoples, the defensive line coach, or defensive end coach, I should say. He also seems like an interesting name, but like you said, the amount of money that they were paying Blake Baker, I think in this new contract they gave him, he was going to be making like $2.2 million.
He was going to be a top 5 paid assistant
coach. Yeah, he was going to be
willing to make him a top 5 paid assistant coach, which means that we're going to be like, we can go out and get basically anybody.
Yeah, Mizzou is not messing around, and that's also another indication of the commitment that DRF and the school has towards the football program, because really, Blake Baker's getting a raise from LSU, a small raise from LSU, but you also have to consider the family ties, because Blake Baker's wife is an alumni from LSU. She played soccer there. Blake Baker was at LSU previously as a coach before this. And that's one part that is just a little bit strange to me, is that Brian Kelly, when he became the head coach at LSU, decided not to retain Blake Baker when he was on the staff, and then comes crawling back to him a couple years later after he proved himself elsewhere. That's a little shitty to me. I feel like
Brian
Blake Baker is better than that.
Shitty?
Yeah, right. But it just makes the move that much worse. Like, if Blake Baker had left gracefully this offseason and went to go become a head coach at like Tulane or something, no one would be complaining. And honestly, a lot of fans felt blessed that that it looked like we were going to be holding on to Blake Baker. And then, Drink tweets out that extension tweet for both Kirby Moore and Blake Baker. And Blake Baker talks about how he never considered anywhere else and his family loves it here and all that. And I'm sure he meant it all at the time, but man, it's just a bad look. It is just a bad look. And to tweet out the Wolf of Wall Street gif, and we know that this is college sports, this is college coaching. Coaches say stuff like that all the time, then they leave. And Nick Saban, even he wasn't going to be the head coach at Alabama until he was, and then look at where Nick Saban and Alabama are now. You know, these things change at the drop of a hat. So it's not a total shock. It just sucks when it happens to your team. And, you know, this is an example of why people are in big favor of the transfer portal and players being able to do whatever they want because coaches do stuff like this. Because now you have an entire recruiting class that was recruited and signed with Blake Baker as the defensive coordinator, and now he's gone. And I'm not saying that any of these guys committed solely because of Blake Baker. I don't really think that's how Drinkwitz operates. I think he does most of the recruiting. I think they have several guys recruiting every single player so that if a guy leaves, you're not losing that relationship with the recruit completely. So I don't think this is going to make the portal class or fall apart or like any guys from the roster leave or anything like that. But it just sucks because Blake Baker was recruiting these guys and now he's gone, and you hope that he doesn't try to poach any of them off this team to follow him to LSU. And same with the other staff members. Like, you hope that Blake Baker, like that's my concern at this point. Like, I like Blake Baker. I think he's a good defensive coordinator, but on the bright side, with the money you have, you can go and hire a legit name, and we'll get into some names in a little bit. I think Drink has built a good enough culture that Blake Baker leaving isn't going to kill this thing. It's not going to totally kill the momentum going into 2024. I'm more concerned with what staff members are going to do. Are they going to follow Blake Baker? And are any of the players going to jump ship? Any of the portal commitments? Because the portal guys are not signed yet. Like, I know linebacker commit Corey Flagg from Miami. It seemed like he was a Blake Baker guy. He played for Blake Baker at Miami when he was a defensive coach there, and it seems like he kind of followed him here. Does he maybe look around? Is he a take at LSU now that Blake Baker's at LSU? I don't know, but it's something worth monitoring going forward in the aftermath of Blake Baker headed to LSU. But I'm more worried about that than I am the fact that Blake Baker is leaving. I think we can replace Blake Baker rather easily. It sucks that he's leaving. It sucks that he's leaving this late in the coaching carousel. I'm just worried about keeping the commits intact and keeping the rest of the staff intact. I think we can still hire a damn good defensive coordinator. And because of the reported salary that Blake Baker is getting from LSU, they're making him the highest paid assistant in college football. Like, I think Blake Baker is good. Again, I don't know if he's worth being the highest paid assistant in college football good, though. I don't know if he's elite. He was really good for us. He turned around a really poor defense when he first got here. But, I mean, looking at the salary that LSU had to buy out and then give him, I mean, there's a lot of and this is an attractive destination too. We just came off a Cotton Bowl victory against Ohio State. We have a lot of talent coming in, so I'm excited to see who we bring in, who we promote potentially, just as much as I am sad to see Blake Baker go.
Yeah. I think the obvious choice still is promoting DJ Smith or the defensive line coach, Peoples. But I think that, yeah, we need to worry at least a little bit about Baker trying to bring over some of his staff and try to worry about at least a few players. I think Flagg's the most obvious one that could potentially leave. I don't think that a guy like Torian Pride or Chris McClellan are going to be leaving. Flag is 50-50, I'd say, but that's still a guy that I honestly expect Drink to retain. I don't think that Baker's going to be able to take him, but if he does, he does. That's probably, I think, about as far as it goes, because we saw Dalen Carnell, he tweeted out like how heartbroken he was and how mad he was about the entire ordeal, which I think is going to like strengthen this bond, the brotherhood that they call it. Like, it's going to strengthen that significantly more. I think the Drink's really going to rally the troops around this and show them like, can't trust anybody. All we got is ourselves, and maybe we don't even have ourselves sometimes. Drink's going to be able to use this as motivation. And I know that he tweeted out how thankful he was for Blake Baker. He's mad. Drink is mad right now. I guarantee you he's not happy with Blake right now at all.
Well, yeah, because Drinkwitz talked about how he didn't want his guy leaving for lateral moves.
Mm-hmm.
This is a lateral move. I understand LSU is giving him a raise. I understand that LSU is
it's a lateral move because the talent that LSU has versus the incoming talent that we have, and the amount of risk that comes with that job, and also the fact that he has to go and work under Brian Kelly is.
Yeah, it just, other than the family ties that Blake Baker has to the LSU area, it doesn't really make a ton of sense for him career-wise because he knows what he has at Mizzou. He likely was going to get a head coaching job next offseason with another good year at Mizzou, whereas now he has to go rebuild an LSU defense that was terrible last year. He's working in a high-pressure situation where if he doesn't produce results, he's probably going to get canned because Brian Kelly also is kind of eager here to build a good defense at LSU, and he just fired his entire defensive staff. He's desperate right now to have a good defense. So if Blake Baker doesn't produce a good defense next year, who knows what Brian Kelly is going to do? You can't trust Brian Kelly. Kind of a odd man to hitch your wagon to, but you do you, Snake Blaker or Baker, whatever. I mean, you guys, you get the gist, but it just doesn't make a ton of sense football wise why he would do this. LSU has a lot of talent. I understand that, but he knew what he had at Mizzou, and one more good year, he would have been a head coach. If he doesn't produce a good defense at LSU next year, his stock could plummet as a head coach. So it's risky. It's risky for sure, but we'll see what happens with him. I really do not wish him any success at LSU because of the way that he went out, and well, LSU is in the conference, so I kind of hope they don't do well. It's also,
I hope that they do well enough to make it to the playoffs and face us in the first round.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, isn't it kind of ironic that Blake Baker went to the school in which his defense probably had their worst performance?
Yeah, that game was
season. I mean,
inside job. LSU game was an inside job now. Well, we went 12-1 if it wasn't for Blake Baker. Sorry, that's how it is. Yeah. LSU game was an inside job. I'm
sure his wife told him to throw that game. Yeah.
Biggest cuck of the year award. I don't know if you have that picture.
He didn't even put he didn't even put a spy on Jaden Daniels. I mean,
not until the fourth quarter. I was there. It was pitiful. By far the worst our defense had ever looked. No wonder it was against LSU. Inside job.
Yeah, he's probably like, thank God I don't have to go up against that offense again. But yeah, it's rough losing your defensive coordinator.
I'm going to stay mad at this guy. Like I can't. I want to face him. I want LSU to win every single game, like 60-50, and then for us to just come in and beat the shit out of them, like 70-20.
Yeah, I
want to, like, if we face Baker, I want to run up the score.
Oh, you know, Drink's gonna want to. We'll have another clip. We'll have another clip next year where he goes up to Blake Baker and tells him we stand on business.
That would be amazing.
But yeah, I need to see that in a mini movie next year if we like face LSU in the college football playoff or something. That would be,
or the SEC championship.
That'd be poetic. Yeah,
but yeah. I mean, it's a lateral move. And again, I would love. Feel like I need to reiterate this. I wouldn't care about this if he didn't handle it the way that he did. Like if he left for
that's just
for another head coaching job. Fine, that's fine. Completely understandable. I get it. But this is a lateral move, arguably a downgrade. This late in the coaching carousel, after you exclaim like how much you love Mizzou and how much you love it here, to go out and do that is a bitch move.
Yeah, he created bitterness within. Like he's a guy that if he had just left for a head coaching job, he would have been remembered fondly.
Yeah,
yeah, he would have been loved universally by Mizzou fans for what he did here. Hey, thanks for what you did. Good luck on your future endeavors. Now it's screw fake flaker. Like that's kind of the vibe right now. A lot of people are pissed off, and you can't really blame them. You can't blame Blake Baker though a ton just because he's getting this massive raise and he's returning to an area.
It's not really that much of a raise from what Mizzou was giving him.
No, but it's substantial, and his wife is from there, and I get it. It's just the way that it was handled, and it's the premature celebrating that you're going to be back next year and telling everyone that you don't see yourself anywhere else, and then you're literally somewhere else, not even 2 weeks later. Like, that is the shitty part. Yeah. So it is what it is. But, if you had asked me at the beginning of the offseason which coordinator I thought was more valuable to keep, or that I would rather keep if I could protect one, it was always going to be Kirby Moore. 100%. I think what Kirby Moore brought to this team this year was a lot more valuable than, don't get me wrong, Blake Baker is great. Still, I want to reiterate that. But Kirby Moore really elevated this offense this year to a level in which they were able to win 11 games. The defense was already in place. We really needed to elevate this offense, though, and Kirby Moore came in and did a fantastic job. And we mentioned it in our podcast as the season was going on. You just look at this team, the roster on offense, all across the board. Every single guy improved this year. With Kirby Moore calling the offense. Like, Mookie got better, Brady got better, Schrader got better, Luther got better. Theo Weiss had a career year after not doing much at Oklahoma. Like, Kirby Moore, I think he's more valuable to this team. And we kind of expected to lose Blake Baker anyway because he had been here for 2 years already and was getting mentioned for head coaching jobs last year.
Yeah.
So it's not like we weren't prepared for this possibility. It just sucks that it happened this late, and it sucks that it happened the way it did. But Mizzou will recover from this. We're moving on from Blake Baker. We don't need Blake Baker to be successful next year. It does. It stings because, we're trying to go all in for 2024. It's obvious with what we're doing in the transfer portal and the way that Drink is operating this offseason. Mizzou knows it has its chance here to win potentially a national championship in 2024. And they were hoping to keep the staff intact. They couldn't, but still, this happens everywhere in college football. You have to replace your staff. This is the consequence of being a good team. People want your coaches. Like, other teams want to pick guys off your staff. We talked about the potential internal candidates like DJ Smith and Kevin Peoples, but there were guys I know that were tied to the LSU opening that are still out there. Jesse Minter at Michigan. Especially if Jim Harbaugh goes to the NFL. Jim Leonard at Wisconsin is another name. I know you really like the guy from Troy.
Yes.
Is there anyone, if the football program does go outside of Columbia to make this hire, is there anyone that you prefer in particular? I guess I kind of answered that for you already, but so what do you think?
I watch a lot of college football, more than any normal person ever should. I'm what you would call a sicko. I wake up at 8 a.m. and I watch College Game Day up until 11, and then I'm watching college football from 11 a.m. until about 2 a.m. It is about 16 hours of college football a day. I love it. Just from watching, and I usually have 3 to 5 games on at a time, and I'm paying attention to multiple. Troy, the defensive coordinator that is there, I would love. Troy did a lot that was really good. I know that they ended up getting blown out by K-State, but week 2, their matchup against them, Troy looked really good on defense in the first half. There's some other games. It was Troy versus Texas State. They absolutely dominated. Texas State's defensive line coach, this is just me. There's literally no connection here whatsoever. But Texas State's defensive line coach, I forget his name, but I really, really, really liked how Texas State's defensive line played. G.J. Kinney is the Texas State head coach. He's more of an offensive guy, but I really like what Texas State did last year. Not all the way on defense, but specifically with their defensive line and how they were able to get pressure. Because I really
Mike Ogwin.
Yes. I really remember watching the UTSA game. If you could look up Texas State's total sacks, like the amount of pressure that it seemed that they were getting on almost every single play was insane. Like one of the most noticeable things when I was watching Group of Five competition this year. Let me go back to the Power Mizzou post that you
Well,
sent.
So I'm looking right now at Greg Gasparotto, who's the Troy defensive coordinator, or he's promoted interim head coach because John Summerall went to Tulane. Bio from the Troy Trojans website on Greg Gasparotto. Troy set the program and Sunbelt single-season record with 45 sacks, and the Trojans rank in the top 15 nationally in sacks, scoring defense, rushing defense, and total defense. Gasparotto and the Trojans enter the 76 Birmingham Bowl, riding a 10-game win streak after defeating App State 48-23 in the 2023 Sunbelt Championship. So, look, I would be in favor of a hire like that. Also, the Sun Belt has been very kind to us with coaches. They gave us Eli Drinkwitz, so I would be
Gasparotto. He was on Drink's staff at App State as the safety coach, which is why he's a name worth watching.
Yeah, so I would be in favor of that. The one risk you do run, though, if you go outside to make this hire, is that if you don't promote one of your guys internally, they're probably going to think, okay, so I'm not good enough to be the defensive coordinator here. And then they kind of shop their names a little bit more. Maybe they feel slighted and they consider leaving or potentially following Blake Baker to LSU because they feel like, they were passed up. That is one risk you do run if you go outside to make this hire. But I would kind of hope that the rest of the guys understand that we're trying to win a national championship next year. Maybe we're not trying to mess around with a first-time defensive coordinator. Maybe we want a guy that has a little bit of skin in the game,
Okay, so I just looked it up. Texas State had 38 sacks last year, which was tied for 9th in all of college football. So if we do promote Kevin Peoples to defensive coordinator or we look to add somebody there, like adding that Texas State defensive line coach would be up on like my massive big board because like I said, I watched a lot of their games. Texas State was terrible last year, but just watching 3 or 4 of their games, he was a guy that I really, really, really liked watching. And Mizzou, our defensive line, look, I mean, we were top 10 in sacks as well. This is a team that's built on the defensive line. The D-line zoo is back, and that's something that we got to keep going. So I'm going to pound my fists for those guys, but the Troy defensive coordinator, the Texas State defensive line coach, who is not going to get hired away by us, but worth thinking about, is just something that I've watched.
Yeah, I mean, it is exciting. Just thinking about the possibilities now with Blake Baker leaving, the different things that you could do and trying to improve this defensive staff, make it even better. It's a suboptimal situation to be losing your DC this late in the offseason, but even Connor said it in our group chat. There's a lot that's about to happen, even in the NFL ranks with coaches, and maybe our defensive coordinator is still coaching in the NFL right now. Yeah, so we'll see. I mean, maybe some people are scared of that idea just because of what happened last time with Steve Wilkes, but
Steve Wilkes was a good defensive coordinator.
Yeah, I don't think people don't give him enough credit because I think all they remember is the first half of that season and not the second half of that season. When the defense was keeping us in
only remember the first half of this year with this year's Mizzou's defense, they wouldn't be too excited because our defense the first half of this year wasn't that good. Said it. It was like what?
Yeah, that's true.
We gave up what, 27 points to K-State. Our defense didn't look good against Memphis. They were not good against Memphis. Vandy was.
They were like terrible. I think I remember them being like terrible on third down against MTSU.
Oh yeah.
Actually, they were just terrible on third down in general to start the year. Even against Vandy, they kind of.
Yeah, like even in that Vandy game, our defense was not 100%. And I think going after the LSU game, before the Kentucky game, where I really think we flipped the switch on defense, after the LSU game, I think that we were bottom, or no, even after the Kentucky, or no. Yeah, it was just after the LSU game, we were like ranked 120th in total air yards allowed in a game, or like passing yards allowed in the game. Like we were bottom of all of college football.
Yeah.
So, I don't like trying to just poke holes at Snake Baker. Thank you for putting him back on screen. I don't like trying to poke holes in him, but if we are going to poke holes this first half of this season, we talked about it on multiple episodes. Like this defense has taken a step back, and I don't know what exactly it was, but we did say it during the year. But that's not a luxury that he can really afford at LSU. That's not something that he can't have a bad half of the season. Otherwise, Brian Kelly's gonna fire him. I mean, look at what he's done just this year. He gutted his entire defensive coordinator staff 2 years in to his tenure at LSU.
Yeah, that's usually not a great sign. Like it. I'm not saying Brian Kelly is going to get fired, but usually cleaning house with your staff after a disappointing season is a precursor to you getting fired. If LSU has a disappointing year next year, then Brian Kelly's seat might be hot, and that's, I said it. He's desperate. He's desperate for a good defense next year. And then there's rumors about the Michigan job and Brian Kelly potentially wanting to go to Michigan, especially if Harbaugh bolts. Now, the funniest scenario that could come out of all of this is Jim Harbaugh goes to the NFL, and then Brian Kelly goes to Michigan, leaving Blake Baker in the dust.
That would be really funny. And
that
this
would
is
be the
something that my
funniest
dad
end of this
mentioned
entire saga.
because he was talking about the possibility of Brian Kelly getting fired and Blake Baker becoming the head coach at LSU. That's not something that could ever be going through Blake Baker's mind because that won't happen. No SEC coach has ever gotten hired without having prior experience as a head coach and anywhere else. Like that doesn't.
Yeah, and like a school like
Especially
LSU,
at LSU.
like the boosters.
LSU's not just
the boosters have
hire
too
away
much
a
influence.
Well,
the boosters have,
even as an intern,
the boosters there have too much influence on coaching hires like that, and they will not be a big fan of promoting internally. They're not going to go the Barry Odom route like Mizzou did after Gary Pinkel. That's not what they're going to do. They will go and hire a splash name because they're LSU.
Yeah. Like even as an intern, they're not going to label him. They're going to look for somebody who has had prior head coaching experience, and they're going to say you're the head coach because you have done this before.
Right.
Like, you can't do that in the SEC, especially at a school like LSU. So even if Brian Kelly does jump ship, that's not a place where Baker can just be like, oh, maybe I can wait and become the head coach in a few years. No. If he wants to be the head coach of LSU or of another Power 5 program, his logical step would have been going to a school like Tulane and being the head coach there for a bit, and just maintaining the success that they have there, and then getting hired away to a lower Power 5 school and then to a higher Power 5 school. That's just how the coaching cycle works if you want to get promoted.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think they would go with Blake Baker. I think if he wanted to be a head coach, his best bet was to stay at Mizzou for one more year, but obviously that's not happening anymore.
One more name that I want to throw into the ring for the Mizzou defensive coordinator job is Terry Kluner. I think he'd do it. Actually, I'll throw two names in there because that book's over there, but I don't know if you guys can see, but in my new cabinet, you can't even see it. I have a bunch of books basically on how to be a defensive coordinator. So I'm reading those. So
are you throwing your name in the ring?
I'll throw my name in the ring. Drink. If you want to call me, you don't know my number, but I will happily give it to you. Shoot me a DM on Twitter. I follow you on there.
You just leave it.
But I'll
comment down below. I mean, I'm sure you guys could just. Yeah, Drinkwitz can leave a comment down below. I'm sure you guys can have a conversation, or maybe he can watch Show Me Movies too.
I mean,
at the very least.
Here's what I do. I'd run a 4-2-5 hybrid defense. Basically have a jack position, so it's basically like a 4-3. But you have that hybrid linebacker, so you're able to drop them into coverage if you want to. Got to make sure that we have solid Mike and strong side linebackers. Nickelbacks are extremely underrated, so we got to make sure that we're solidified there. Trying to think of what else I've learned.
I mean, you just got to learn to steal signs.
True. Just I am going to the Connor Stallion School of Cheating. That does start out that day. I am taking the film course.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you could go to the Blake Baker School of How to Be a Snake too.
True. I don't know if it's Blake Baker's school. I think that he went to Kevin Durant's school.
Kevin Durant. Yeah, I saw someone on Twitter, a Mizzou fan. Yeah, a Mizzou fan made a meme, and it was like Blake Baker, and then wiping the glasses, and they put it back on. It's Kevin Durant. Yeah. That was funny, but hey, it is what it is. But I think we'll probably wrap it up there for this emergency episode. Yeah, guys. It is what it is. Blake Baker said to LSU, we turned the page in this era of Mizzou football to getting a new defensive coordinator. It sucks. It seemed like we were going to keep the staff intact for one more year, but this is just what happens when you go 11-2. People want your coaches, and LSU got one of them, and they were willing to move mountains in order to do so. You can't really blame Drinkwitz. You can't blame Mizzou, because they bent over backwards for Blake Baker, and he still decided to leave at the end of the day, and LSU's making him the highest paid assistant in college football. I like Blake Baker.
No, I don't.
I'm not sure if he deserves to be the highest paid assistant in college football. Yeah, I know. I know. You don't like him anymore. I get it. So we'll end with that.
If anybody's still somehow watching us, just F around at this point. Thanks.
Snake Faker, we hardly knew you.
Yeah. If you want to watch any more of our tomfoolery, go over to Show Me Movies. I do movie reviews over there. Josh is going to start doing movie reviews, hopefully, again soon. Yeah. But I don't have too much more to add. Snake Flaker, we'll see you hopefully in the SEC championship game where we hang 50 on your ass.
Yep, there you have it, guys. So let us know down in the comments below what you think Mizzou should do about the defensive coordinator opening. Your thoughts on Blake Baker bolting for LSU. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe so more Mizzou fans can find – gosh, I can't talk. Like, share, and subscribe so more Mizzou fans can find this, and we will see you in the next one. MIZ.
ZOU.